Hello everyone and Happy New Year. Welcome to episode 26 of Conversing on Africa's Peace, a podcast produced by Amani Africa Media and Research Services, focusing on the African Union's Peace and Security Council and key related issues. This is Previn. My colleague Fikir Getachew is joining me on today's episode of our podcast. Hello Fikir.
Hi Previn.
Great. Starting off the year 2025, the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire, under the chairship of His Excellency Enio Maes, the permanent representative of Cote d'Ivoire to the AU, will be chairing the PSC in January 2025. But as always, before we delve into the details of January's Peace and Security Council's program of work, why don't you briefly reflect back on Council's engagement in December 2024 and perhaps capture some of the major changes introduced to the program in the course of the month?
Thank you, Previn. So Djibouti presided over the chairship of the PSC in December 2024, and we saw the PSC having a number of ambassadorial level sessions, which included the review of the implementation of its decision. Another session was on enhancing the AU Continental Early Warning System and implementation of early action. This session was specifically focused on the review of the country structural vulnerability and resilience assessment and country structural vulnerability mitigation strategies. Update on the progress made towards silencing the guns was another session which featured mid-month. And the last session of the year, held on the 19th of December, was the only ministerial and country-specific PSC meeting, which focused on consideration of the situation in Somalia and post-ATMIS security arrangements. The session came in the context of the end of ATMIS's mandates, which was coming in on the 31st of December, and the resumption of the successor mission, AUSSOM, thereupon. While there remained loose ends with regards to the progress in finalizing the preparations for and the design for the new mission.
Yeah, the PSC also participated in the 11th annual high-level seminar on peace and security in enhancing cooperation between the AU Peace and Security Council and the African members of the UN Security Council in addressing peace and security issues on the continent. This 11th edition of the high-level seminar, which was chaired by His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Djibouti, and the chairperson of the PSC for the month of December 2024, was held within the context of the 20th anniversary of the PSC in order to take stock of progress achieved by the A3+. This is in amplifying the African voice and in effectively championing African interests and positions within the UN Security Council's decision-making processes, which include the challenges faced, lessons learned, and best practices. This was also an opportunity of the seminar to acknowledge the achievements of the AU Counterterrorism Center since its establishment 20 years ago. Additionally, the seminar's agenda was fashioned around three main thematic guiding sessions, which were: one, building integrated capacities for effectively combating terrorism and violent extremism, this being under the lens of the 20th anniversary of the African Union Counterterrorism Center, achievements and visions for the future. Number two was on implementation of the Pact of the Future, focusing on UN Security Council reform and update on the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 2719, which was adopted in 2023. And lastly, number three was coordination between the Peace and Security Council and the A3+ towards the Africa agenda in the PSC and in the UN Security Council.
Wonderful. Also, a session that stood out for me was the 1252nd meeting of the PSC held on the 18th of December, an update on the progress made towards silencing the guns in Africa. This was a session convened within the framework of the decision of the AU to review the implementation of its flagship project every 2 years, a decision passed during the 14th Extraordinary Summit of the AU, which also decided to extend the SDG agenda for a period of 10 years up to 2030, with periodic reviews every 2 years. Discussions in this PSC session delved into the imperative of collective action and effective implementation of the AU Master Roadmap to End Violent Conflicts and the importance of security sector governance and post-conflict reconstruction and development. The Council also discussed bridging the gap between early warnings and early action, the importance of implementing AU Assembly decision on peace and security, and focusing on expediting the implementation of the Malabo Declaration, among others. This PSC session also invited Amane Africa in the discussion to give a briefing on the review of the state of implementation of the AU's flagship project on SDG. This was based on our special research report titled Memo to the New AU Commission Leadership from the Roaring Guns on AU's First Decades of Silencing the Guns, which was published on October 2024, and listeners can find it on our website. This report gives insights, research, and analysis conducted more than a year on the first 10 years of silencing the guns, with distinct recommendation on why SDG has to entail a more effective mobilization of collective action for ending violent conflict and preventing the eruption of new wars in order to register irreversible progress towards silencing the guns by 2030. And also the imperative of deploying targeted policy action in two ways. One, in resolving ongoing violent conflicts, and another for preventing the risk of eruption of new conflicts or relapse back into conflicts. Despite these meetings happening, there was initially a planned session, which was an informal consultation with countries in political transition, which did not happen. The second revision of the PSC program of work also saw the postponement of the fourth annual joint retreat between the PSC and the APRM.
Thank you, Fikir, for that look back. Looking ahead, 7 substantive sessions covering 8 agenda items are planned to be considered by the Peace and Security Council this month. All the sessions are expected to take place at the ambassadorial level, except for one session dedicated to a country situation. All the remaining agenda items are on thematic issues. This month, the PSC will also commemorate the 3rd Africa Day of Peace and Reconciliation. So the first PSC meeting in 2025 was on consideration of the report of the chairperson of the AU Commission on the activities of the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, against Boko Haram and the renewal of its mandate. A session which discussed the state of operation of the MNJTF, the security situation in the Lake Chad Basin, and the implementation of the regional stabilization strategy. The meeting also led to the renewal of the MNJTF mandate for another 12 months, this being effective from the 1st of February 2025. We can recall that during the Peace and Security Council's 1197th meeting, which was held on 30th January 2024, was when PSC last renewed the mandate of the MNJTF for another period of 12 months, which is actually set to expire on 1st February 2025. The PSC also requested the AU Commission and the Lake Chad Basin Commission to renew the Memorandum of Understanding and the Support Implementation Agreement, SIA, between the AU, Lake Chad Basin Commission, and the MNJTF troop contributing countries, which would guide the provision of AU additional support to the MNJTF for a year. After that, the PSC will then convene its second session, which will be on 20th January, this being on strengthening cooperation and collaboration between the PSC and the REX-RMs in the management of conflict and new security threats on the continent. The issue involving enhanced engagements between the PSC and the regional economic communities and the regional mechanisms has notably gained increased attention on Council over the recent past. This is crucial, actually, because regional organizations often have a better understanding of local dynamics. This has been further seen in the gesture of the PSC to this endeavor. We can recall that last year, the PSC convened its first annual joint consultative meetings with the Mediation and Security Council of ECOWAS. This was in April, held in Abuja, Nigeria. And also the meeting with the Southern African Development Community organ on politics, defense, and security, which was held in August in Gaborone, Botswana. In addition to this, we can also see from the conclusions of the 16th retreat of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union on review of its working methods, which was held on 5th and 6th of November 2024 in Djibouti, with regard to its third agenda, which focused on the PSC working methods and budget of the PSC. Council stressed the need for scaling up the interactions and collaboration between itself and the regional economic communities and regional mechanisms, and in this regard called for the revival of the annual joint consultations at least twice per year. while also continuously enhancing the collaboration and interactions with individual REX RMs, including by undertaking joint field missions in order to promote and deepen strategic convergence and common messaging. It is therefore expected that this upcoming session will provide an opportunity to explore trends and developments in the relationship between PSE and REX RMs, as well as opportunities for collaboration and coordination on peace and security issues with all regional blocs, with the overall objective of strengthening synergies in regional peace and security initiatives. Fikr, if you could please walk us through the subsequent sections for the Council in January.
Yes. On the 22nd of January, there will be a session focused on the situation in Somalia and the deployment of AUSSOM, a mission that is vital for stabilizing the country. The meeting comes soon after the launch of the AUSSOM's mandate, which began on the 1st of January, and will aim to evaluate the mission's deployment in accordance with the CONOPS approved by the PSC during its 1225th meeting held on August 2024, as well as the roadmap endorsed at the 8th UN-AU High-Level Conference on 21 October 2024. The composition of the mission is another factor of the AUSSOM fabric that still remains unsettled and that has become a moving target as negotiations continue. Contrary to the established norm wherein the negotiation over the composition of a mission is supposed to be led by the AU, in this instance, we have been seeing bilateral decisions between the host and troop contributing countries. Thus far, the participation of ATMIS contributors, which are Djibouti, Kenya, and Uganda, has been established. They will continue as contributors to AUSSOM as well. Burundi, which was among the first of the two contributors when AMISOM was first deployed in 2007, considered the number of troops allocated unacceptable and decided not to participate in the mission as an act of protest. The participation of Ethiopia, another contributor to ATMIS, is now back on the table following the Ankara Declaration, but despite persistent earlier opposition from Somalia for Ethiopia's role in AUSSOM.
Yes, some school of thought suggests that the question appears to be not whether Ethiopia will participate, rather whether it will operate in the locations it served under ATMIS. Right. Following that, the PSC will convene on 24th January to consider the half-year report of the chairperson of the Commission on Elections in Africa, elections conducted between July to December 2024, and also it will consider outlook for 2025. This report is anticipated to offer insights into the elections scheduled for 2025, particularly those expected to happen in the first half of the year. It may also include discussions on some elections from the second half of 2024, which include Rwanda, Algeria, Tunisia, Mozambique, Botswana, Mauritius, Gabon, Senegal, Namibia, Chad, and Ghana, which are likely to generate interest in the PSC. Additionally, the report is expected to feature an overview of governance trends in Africa and the role and participation of elections, the role and participation in elections of the AU Election Observer Mission.
Moving on the 28th of January, the PSC will have a session with 2 agenda items. The first agenda item will be to consider the report of the activities of the Peace and Security Council and the state of peace and security in Africa. This report, detailing the Council's activities in 2024 and an assessment of Africa's peace and security landscape, will be submitted to the 38th Ordinary Session of the AU Assembly, scheduled to take place in February for adoption. The second agenda item will be to consider the report on the implementing of the AU Master Roadmap of Practical Steps to Silencing the Guns in Africa, Achievements, Challenges, and Prospects.
On 30th January, the Peace and Security Council will then have a session on the update on the operationalization of the African Standby Force. While progress has been made towards the operationalization of the ASF, its complete implementation still hinges on political will. We can recall that during Council's 1159th meeting on the briefing on the status of implementation of the Common African Defense and Security Policy and other relevant defense and security instruments on the continent, with specific focus on update on operationalization of the African Standby Force, a meeting held on 22nd June 2023. The PSC requested the AU Commission to expedite the implementation of decisions of the 15th meeting of the STCDs, particularly the strategic review of the Africa Standby Force. The AU Commission commenced the process of strategic review of the ASF with a technical consultative meeting held in Algiers, Algeria, from 2nd to the 4th of December 2024. This session, therefore, is expected to give updates on developments thus far and the next steps towards the full operationalization of the ASF.
The last activity of the PSC for January is the commemoration of Africa Day of Peace and Reconciliation. To be commemorated on the 31st of January, this will be the 3rd anniversary of the Africa Day of Peace. After it was designated at the 16th Extraordinary Session of the AU Assembly of Heads of States and Government in May 2022 in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, Africa Day of Peace and Reconciliation is celebrated annually on January 31st, and Angola's president, President Lorenzo, was appointed as the AU champion for peace and reconciliation in Africa.
Very well. So that brings us to the end of another episode. We wish Cote d'Ivoire a very fruitful month as it takes the chairship of the PSC for January 2025. And we wish everyone taking part in the work of the Peace and Security Council productive discussions on the important topics outlined briefly here today. We are happy to encourage our listeners to dig deeper into the PSC's agenda, as well as the analytical work that we produce. Before we go, as usual, we'd like to wish the following African states happy national days of celebration in January. We have Cameroon and Sudan, which always celebrate their independence days on 1st January. Let me also thank our listeners for joining us for this month's edition of Conversing on Africa's Peace podcast. We hope you have a great month and a productive 2025. We'll be back next month to consider the PSC's agenda for February 2025. Until then, goodbye. We wish you all peace and prosperity and a happy new year once more.